Number 10. Agent Anti-Venom. Everybody needs a good symbiote on their team, and if I was gonna pick one of them to put on my team, I think I'd be stupid to not pick Eugene Flash Thompson's Agent Venom. He is my favorite and probably the most reliable symbiotic superhero out there. The Savage Avengers have the benefit of getting the even better Agent Anti-Venom, which is basically the same thing with upgrades. So on top of the symbiotic powers awarded by the Venom symbiote, Agent Anti-Venom was also caustic to symbiotes, to the extent that prolonged physical contact will actually kill them. His touch also kills poisons and allows Flash to purge a person's body of impurities such as toxins and diseases. But unlike the original Anti-Venom, Flash can also heal physical injuries and doesn't have the random power negation effect. Flash's past as a soldier and boxer plus all his symbiotic enhancements make him someone you just don't want to mess with. Number 9. DAIMON HELLSTROM. As the son of the devil, it would honestly be kind of weird if DAIMON HELLSTROM, otherwise known as HELLSTORM, didn't make this list. DAIMON was born when the demon Satan decided to have a child with a human woman as a way of accessing even greater power. So already we're off to a less than cheerful start. But luckily, after learning of his heritage, HELLSTROM decided to turn his back on his father and vowed to fight against him, even eventually slaying his father and taking lordship over the dimension of Hell. As a ruler of a dimension of Hell and son of Satan, HELLSTROM has a Cambion physiology and wields crazy magical abilities, as well as commanding vast power in his own dimension, potentially meaning he can perform any magical feat. His physiology gives him super strength and durability, and due to his dark soul, he has shape-shifting and teleportation abilities as well as magical awareness. HELLSTROM has also wielded a trident made of netheranium, which is a psycho-sensitive metal found only in his extra-dimensional realm, and the weapon is a medium through which magical energies can be amplified and projected. I wish I knew more about him before making this list because he's honestly kind of really cool. Number 8. Weapon H. Clayton Cortez is actually a newer addition to the Marvel landscape, but in my opinion he is pretty cool. Clayton was a Marine who, after defecting, was subjected to Weapon X's H division, which was basically asking the question, what would happen if we mixed the Hulk and Wolverine and made them cyborgs? H-Alpha, which was Clayton's designation, was different though. He retained more of his brain than the other subjects, and he was also not loyal to Director Stryker's cause. So, when this guy popped out of his incubation chamber, it didn't go too well for his creators. Are we surprised though? This Hulk-Wolverine hybrid has an adamantium bonded skeleton, which still allows him to transform from human form to Hulk-out form. And yes, he has an almost limitless level of strength, and the insane level of durability afforded to the Hulk, on top of the adamantium skeleton. And we haven't even got to the adamantium bone claws and studs, regenerative healing factor, and enhanced senses. The one who created him, Dr. Alba, suggested that Weapon H could actually end the life of every living being on this earth. That's pretty insane. Number 7. Juggernaut. The stepbrother of Charles Xavier, Cain Marko, started off on the wrong foot as a bully to his brother. So he already wasn't nice when he gained the powers of irresistible force embodiment. This basically means that once Cain begins to advance in a certain direction, it is virtually impossible to halt his movement. Tons of rocks and plasma discharge cannons have slowed his pace, but they cannot completely halt him. Only a few things have ever been able to stop Juggernaut. Thor's use of his God Blast is one of them. War-Hulk, with increased strength thanks to Apocalypse's grafting celestial tech to him, which allowed Hulk to increase his strength and stop the Juggernaut, is another. Cain gained this ability after bonding to the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak. Cyttorak being an immensely powerful entity described as both a god and a demon. The bands also granted Cain with near limitless strength and stamina and gave him the ability to summon his mystical armor at a moment's notice. When Cain was the avatar of Cyttorak, these powers were boosted to even greater heights, which is just a scary thought. Number 6. Ghost Rider. If there is one thing I have learned from my time on Earth so far, it would be that you never make deals with people who look like, sound like, or call themselves the devil. There are multiple instances of this happening in the backstory of stunt motorcyclist Johnny Blaze. His mother tried to make a deal with Mephisto that would stop Johnny becoming the spirit of vengeance thanks to a family curse, and that didn't go as planned. And then, Johnny tried to make a deal with the same demon to save his surrogate father, which also did not go as planned and did not save him at all. Johnny was cursed with the power of the spirit of vengeance that inhabits his body, turning him into the Ghost Rider. While the Ghost Rider is in control, Johnny Blaze only influences its decisions to an extent as he takes the back seat, quote unquote. Doctor Strange has stated Johnny Blaze is simply a mortal and acts as a built-in safety, limiting the power of the Ghost Rider. Doctor Strange has also stated that when the demon Zarathos takes possession of the Ghost Rider's power are, for most intents and purposes, boundless and quote unquote godlike. Those powers include superhuman strength with potential limitlessness, superhuman stamina, superhuman immunity to basically all earthly physical damage, superhuman agility, regenerative healing, supernatural awareness, hellfire manipulation including infusion, projection, and constructs, firestorms, sin and soul manipulation, hell cycle symbiosis, dimensional travel, demon magic, mystical fiery chain projection, size alteration, and his key ability, the penance stare, causing any individual who stares into his eyes to see and feel every bit of pain they have ever inflicted on anyone in their entire lifetime for all eternity. Number 5. MAGIK. Ilyana Rasputina is a mutant sorceress who rules the demonic realm known as Limbo. She was taken to Limbo by Belasco, and in the few seconds that passed on Earth, Ilyana aged years in Limbo. Time she spent mastering different dark arts. MAGIK also exhibited the mutant ability to mentally control stepping discs that are connected to Limbo and allow her and others to teleport across interstellar distances, space, and time. She joined the New Mutants and she has gone on to eventually join the ranks of the X-Men, and has been mentored by Doctor Strange, advancing her magical abilities even further, which is quite a statement as she is the Sorcerer Supreme in her Limbo dimension, having been taught black magic by Belasco and white magic from an alternate Aurora Monroe. And she was among those who were considered for becoming the new Sorcerer Supreme of Earth 616. Number 4. Dr. Voodoo. Jericho Drum is the master practitioner of voodoo white magic, according to the Book of Vishanti, and he has been stated as one of the most powerful mystic practitioners on the planet. Which is why it makes sense that he was the one to actually become the new Sorcerer Supreme for a while in Doctor Strange's place after the Eye of Agamotto deemed that he possesses a pure heart and a clean soul. Now his main magical ability allows him to interact with spirits for a number of different effects. He can summon skeletons, the spirits of the dead, and manipulate zombies with his necromancy. He can manipulate biological forces like animals and trees, as well as heal others, and he has even removed Frank Castle's mouth one time, which was pretty freaky. He has a degree of pyrokinesis, can control a voodoo smoke/mist, and can manipulate and control people's souls. Now that is all on top of the normal mystical abilities he possesses through spells that were increased in potential when he was trained by Doctor Strange and when he became Sorcerer Supreme. Number 3. Dr. Doom. Victor Von Doom has been a staple villain in the worlds of Marvel Comics since 1962. But there is more to this incredibly powerful, super intelligent, and charismatic Latverian monarch. He has helped the forces of good on several occasions, even if it was for selfish ends, and has recently reformed and even become a hero. He held the power cosmic and the power of the Beyonder twice, becoming God King of Battleworld the second time. He is an incredibly capable character. Dr. Victor Von Doom was introduced to magic by his mother, but he expanded his knowledge by going through time and training with characters like Morgana Le Fay. He is proved capable of mystical blasts, force fields, ensnaring, banishing, and portals, summoning entities and demonic creatures, casting and reversing spells, teleportation, dimensional travel, healing of himself and others, time travel, power absorption, elemental manipulation, telekinesis, as well as power nullification. He also hones psionic abilities such as mind transference, hypnotism, and technopathy. He has been considered for the role of Sorcerer Supreme, and is just one of the best villains Marvel has ever created. Number 2. Doctor Strange. Dr. Stephen Strange. His magical feats are almost unmatched by any other. He is among the most adept magic user in the multiverse and has shown it many times. When he first came on the scene, and for a long while, he was so insanely powerful that he was capable of doing pretty much anything he wanted. It got to the point that Marvel even decided to de-power him. He has passed a test in which he accepted death, which meant he now no longer ages and can only be de-lifed by external means, meaning he is essentially immortal. His energy blasts are capable of destroying moons and planets. You remember when I listed all the things Dr. Doom can do? Well, Strange can do all of them, probably better, and more. He has mastered the words of the Black Priest, allowing him to distort reality. He frequently calls on the divine empowerment and extra-dimensional energy of mystical and non-mystical beings in multiple dimensions to power his spells, and he can use black magic like taking the power of another entity by force of will. But he has stopped using that kind of magic, so it's whatever. He is the defender of reality and has put together so many different crazy teams, including this one. Number 1. Kang the Conqueror. Nathaniel Richards was born on the 30th century Earth of Reality 6311, where humanity never went into the Dark Ages. In this reality, after centuries of technological advancement and war, peace was finally brought to the Earth by a time traveler from Earth 616, also named Nathaniel Richards, known as the legendary Benefactor. Now, the Nathaniel Richards born to the 6311 reality is said to be a descendant of the Benefactor through Reed Richards, although he may be descended from Dr. Doom. So already we're off to a confusing start, and that's before we even get into the seemingly endless versions of him by different names and from different realities that are littered throughout Marvel Comics and appear in the 616 reality. Basically, after landing in the 40th century, Nathaniel reinvented himself as Kang the Conqueror, conquering the Earth, then the galaxy, and then setting his sight on other times and realities. Apart from his advanced physiology and exceptional mind, Kang's battle armor is produced from a rare synthetic alloy from the 40th century and responds to his subconscious thoughts. It grants him abilities including enhanced strength, durability withstanding even a nuclear strike at point-blank range, anti-gravity, video communication, time travel, concussive bolts, summoning any number of weapons which are transported to him through the time stream instantly, electric shocks, hover pads, survival kits, and body transference. He is an Avengers level threat and easily takes any of the top spots on this list. Number 10. Daredevil. When Matt Murdock guilted himself into giving up Daredevil, Elektra started keeping a watchful eye over him. She starts acting as a vigilante in Hell's Kitchen to prove to Matt that she can fight without causing casualties and prove that she can train him to be the man he was meant to be. Eventually, when Matt gives himself up as Daredevil over to the police, Elektra takes over the mantle. Her first run-in with Savage Avengers was before this though. Elektra was undercover in the Hand when she followed them to the Savage Land. There, they were working with sorcerer Kulan Gath to collect warriors to sacrifice to a primordial god. In their second adventure, Elektra is operating as Daredevil and goes into the past with this new team of Savage Avengers in a conflict with Deathlock. I'm really liking her as Daredevil so far. Her abilities and training as an assassin make her an impressive hero to say the least. Number 9. Black Widow. A former KGB agent, Natasha Alyanova Romanova, better known as Natasha Romanoff, which is way easier to say, or Black Widow, was trained by the top secret Soviet brainwashing and training program, the Red Room, to become the ultimate super spy. She defected from the Soviet Union to the US to join S.H.I.E.L.D. While in the Red Room, she was bio and psychotechnologically enhanced, giving her an unusually long lifespan and prolonged youthful appearance. In the past, she was given versions of the super soldier serum, so she possesses peak level physiology, making her as strong, agile, fast, and durable as a female human can possibly be without being classified as superhuman. This also extends to her senses and immune system, which are similarly heightened to peak human levels. Black Widow is one of the top espionage operatives in the world, being one of the best information gatherers in the Marvel Universe. She's fluent in many different languages and is an expert computer programmer and hacker. She's an accomplished battle strategist and field commander and has been the leader of the Avengers and even S.H.I.E.L.D. on one occasion. So her addition to the Savage Avengers team should never be rejected. Number 8. It's Punisher. When US Marine veteran Frank Castle's family was dispatched for witnessing a mob hit, Frank vowed to avenge their deaths and become a one-man army in his personal war against crime. He became the vigilante known as the Punisher. He's quite impressive for a regular dude. Castle is in peak physical condition and is able to access and adapt to just about any situation and turn it to his advantage, using only his skills and killer instinct. He has a very high threshold for pain, able to undergo surgery without any kind of anesthesia, and he can take multiple shots and stab wounds and continue fighting. He can even take hits from from superheroes and villains with superhuman strength and just keep on going. The Punisher's reflexes are also probably some of the best of any human, able to dodge Captain America's shield and take out speedsters. Castle is also an excellent military tactician and strategist, able to create effective plans on the spot, and has repeatedly outwitted SHIELD, Hammer, and even the Avengers. He is a reconnaissance and survival expert, armorer and gunsmith, and a master martial artist and hand-to-hand combatant, while also being skilled at just about every type of firearm known to man. Frank was lured to the Savage Land where he joined with other heroes to become the Savage Avengers, when hand ninjas exhumed the body of his wife and kids. The ninjas were working for Kulan Gath, who was collecting warriors to use their blood in a ritual to raise an ancient god, as we have already said. Maybe you should have left Frank out of it though. I don't know. Number 7. Conan. Conan the Barbarian was born on a carnage-strewn battlefield in the hills of the westernmost region of Chimeria. Members of his tribe encircled Fiala, his mother, to protect her while she was giving birth to Conan. The fact that he was born on a battlefield was considered amongst the Chimerians, and by me, to be an omen that Conan would grow up to be a great warrior one day. And we weren't wrong. He was one of the most accomplished swordsmen of the Hyborian Age, and is often listed alongside King Arthur, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Zorro as one of the greatest fictional sword fighters in history, which is a really cool thing to put on a resume. Conan has unusual strength, agility, and speed for just a human guy. He has lifted immense objects or enemies, even breaking the neck of a raging bull when he was still relatively young. Conan usually relies upon his lightning-fast reflexes in combat situations, and they very rarely have failed him. Through years of dealing with sorcerers, magicians, and witches, he has even developed a moderate level of resistance to magic and mind control spells, which definitely comes in handy in the first volume of Savage Avengers. While primarily known as a wandering sellsword, Conan progressively became a master tactician, leading entire armies into battle, and eventually Conan even became king of Aquilonia. Number 6. Black Knight. Born and raised in Gloucester, Massachusetts, Dane Whitman attended university, eventually obtaining a master's degree in physics, and that's not his superpower. The descendant of a long line of heroes who took up the mantle of the mysterious Black Knight, Whitman assumed the role after his uncle Nathan Garrett, who had taken up the name as a villain, perished in a battle with Iron Man. Dane became a hero, wielding the Power Lance. He has also wielded several swords, including the Ebony Blade, a powerful but cursed weapon forged from a meteorite which is capable of cutting through almost any substance, and he's even wielded Excalibur. While holding the Ebony Blade though, Black Knight is unable to be killed, even if he loses his head or something like that. Whitman also possesses the Sword of Light and Shield of Night, bestowed upon him by the Lady of the Lake. Dane Whitman has been a member of the Avengers and leader of Ultra Force, and is now the current king of Weird World, but that hasn't stopped him from his savage avenging. Number 5. Devil Dinosaur. Okay, look, he ain't on the team at all really, but he did kind of help them unintentionally, and I also really want to talk about this dino since I haven't before, so Devil Dinosaur. He's basically just a big red intelligent T-Rex from another universe. Not intelligent enough to talk or anything, but he understands the situations he's in, can understand human language, and even has some telepathic connection with certain characters. As for the Savage Avengers, in Volume 2, Issue 2, the Savage heroes have been sent back in time to the Hyborian era, and they end up fighting Devil Dinosaur in a coliseum. That is, until they kind of not really work together to bust out of there. He doesn't have many powers other than super intelligence and strength, but he is a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which I can imagine is very helpful. Number 4. Wolverine. This mutant needs almost no introduction, being one of the most recognizable characters in Marvel's lineup. James Logan Howlett is a long-lived Canadian mutant with the rage of a beast and the soul of a samurai. His mysterious past is filled with blood, war, and betrayal, creating one of the greatest characters Marvel has ever made. If you don't already know his powers, Wolverine has an accelerated healing factor, keenly enhanced senses, and bone claws in each hand, which were improved upon when his whole skeleton, including the claws, were coated in adamantium, one of the hardest metals on Earth. This rage-filled samurai mutant Canadian joined up with the Savage Avengers in 2020 to help fight against Kulan Gath, and he's honestly a great addition to every team he joins. So let's hear some love for Wolverine! Yeah! Woo! Okay. moving on. Number 3, the Venom symbiote. I say specifically the symbiote because at this time Eddie Brock and Venom were having a bit of a rough period and had separated from each other for the time being. At least that's what I've gathered from reading. Either way, alerted to the suffering of another member of his species at the hands of Cool and Gath, the Venom symbiote arrived where the future Savage Avengers were at to help Logan, the Punisher, Elektra, and Dr. Voodoo fight the eldritch god Cool and Gath was trying to summon. Exposure to the god's cosmic radiation caused the Venom symbiote to take on the form of a massive dragon, letting it hold its own against the god in combat. The symbiote would do its best to help in the fight, saving the other members of its species in the process. But he's Venom! We all know how cool he is. I don't really have to explain this to you. Nope. Number 2, Dagger. When her boyfriend Rob left for college, Tandy Bowen, a 16-year-old girl who grew up in Shaker Heights, Ohio, left home on a bus for New York City. While wandering the streets, a man tried to mug her, but she was rescued by Tyrone Johnson, a fellow runaway teen. She bought Tyrone food and the two grew to care about each other. But when a guy named Simon Marshall rounded up a bunch of the city's teen runaways offering them food and shelter, Tandy agreed to go, being kind of naive. And Tyrone went with her because he wanted to protect Tandy, which was good, because Tyrone was right to be suspicious. The runaway teens were knocked unconscious by Marshall's men and injected with an experimental substance. The two were the only teens who survived and soon developed powers. For Tandy, she can generate a form of living light, which is actually life force that she uses, most commonly, in the form of psionic light daggers, which travel wherever she wills them and which drain living beings of life force. Her light daggers also have the capacity to cure certain persons of substance addiction, which is an interesting side effect. Tandy can also project her light into Cloak's dimension to feed his quote-unquote hunger. She's unharmed when traveling through his dimension and can pass this protection to others, which leads me to the next spot. Number 1, Cloak. Tyrone Johnson is the dark half of the vigilante duo known as Cloak and Dagger. After a substance-related experiment awakened his powers, he became a living personification of darkness. Tyrone grew up in South Boston and had a really bad stuttering condition, which inadvertently caused him to be unable to save his friend's life. Tyrone ran away from the home because of the guilt of that, and he ended up in New York City's ports, desperate for food and searching for someone to rob. Instead, he found Tandy Bowen, another runaway, and ironically prevented her from being robbed. They eventually were subjected to the experimental substance that caused them to gain their powers. For Cloak, he has the ability to manipulate dark force energy and access the dimension that it comes from, which he uses to do things like creating localized fields of impenetrable darkness, creating mobile solid tendrils of darkness, hiding in shadows, becoming intangible, pulling people into the dark force dimension, trapping them there, and teleporting himself and others by taking an interdimensional shortcut through the dark force dimension. Clearly, very useful.
Number 10, Bullseye. What do you do when you have a supervillain whose power is being able to hit practically any target? Well, you have him replace a superhero who can pretty much do the same. Bullseye, a mysterious assassin who we still don't even know the full name of beyond Lester Somebody, is most well known for frequently clashing with Daredevil and being under the employ of Kingpin. However, after using his sociopathic talents during the Skrull invasion and aiding the Thunderbolts, Bullseye was given the position of being a replacement Hawkeye, a position he kept threatening to lose as his murder sprees began drawing more and more attention to the villainous side of Osborn's Avengers team. Who knows, maybe we'll get a season 2 of the Disney Plus Hawkeye show and get to see an evil Hawkeye on screen after all.
Number 9, Toxie. Toxie is one of the worst there is out there. She is June Covington, a post-grad who was working at NYU and became obsessed with perfecting the human genetic code. She succeeded in doing so and aimed to use her research to fix a man who she found to be perfect except for a birth defect in his arm. In issue number 1 of Osborn, we learned that the man, Edward Wynn, would however refuse her help and attempt to have her imprisoned for her extreme research methods and basically eugenics-focused science. But she'd get back at him later on. Claiming to have changed her ways, she lured him to her lab, paralyzed him, and then left him trapped there to rot. Toxie ends up joining the Dark Avengers team following Norman Osborn's escape from the raft. She becomes the new Scarlet Witch of his team and also ends up romantically involved with Norman, despite initially showing disinterest in him the first time they met when she was drumming up money to fund her research.
Number 8, Ares. Tell me if you've heard this one before. The gods of one of mankind's most well-spread mythologies are actually advanced beings from their own unique pocket dimension, so powerful and advanced compared to the people of Earth that we can only qualify them as godlike. Well, this is the explanation given in the Marvel Universe for both the Greek and Norse gods, and perhaps that's why Norman Osborn was able to use them so interchangeably when searching for a replacement Thor. While the Greek god of war Ares had been on good terms with the Avengers before Osborn was placed in charge, he was one of the few superpowered beings who saw nothing wrong with the change in leadership and would go on to lead the Dark Avengers assault on Asgard. Asgard may be gone in the MCU already, but that doesn't mean I'm still not itching to see Thor and Loki take on another Pantheon's god. Bring it on, Marvel.
Number 7. Aya Peak. Aya Peak is one of the alternate darker versions of Spider-Man. Overall, a pretty deadly and cool character inspired by an actual worshipped and feared deity of the Mochi civilization, which flourished in northern Peru from the 1st to 8th century CE. Pretty neat stuff. Aya Peak ended up joining Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers team that was assembled after he escaped the raft. I think he'd be a cool character to have for his overall appearance. He has like snakes for hair, fangs, and a spider-like body with multiple limbs, but he'd also just be cool to act as an anti-Spider-Man, being literally a man, or well, god really, who is part spider but is known for his more cruel and violent approach. His name is really Aya Peak the Decapitator, so yeah. Also, what's up with Dark Avengers and gods? Apparently that's a thing.
Number 6. Scar. You might have heard that the Hulk briefly lived as a gladiator on the distant world of Sakaar, but did you know that in the comics he wound up actually having a son from this adventure? The offspring of the Hulk and Kyera the Old Strong, Scar's mother died so that he might live during the destruction of his planet, and eventually made his way back to Earth following in his father's footsteps. While initially seen as a threat by many of the world's heroes, Scar wound up being one of the few Dark Avengers to redeem himself. He was secretly a double agent for Steve Rogers all along, right under Norman Osborn's nose. The Hulk's always been one of my favorite characters in the MCU, and seeing him deal with father and son issues would bring a whole lot of drama to everyone's favorite universe, and I personally can't wait.
Number 5. Daken. I mean, we should probably get Wolverine and the rest of the mutant crew in the MCU first, but as soon as they are in, this is one of the people I want immediately thereafter. Daken is the son of Wolverine, who actually currently goes by his given name of Akihiro in the comics. Daken was actually a cruel nickname that Akihiro initially just adopted as his own. Daken in Japanese basically translates to cur or mongrel in English, and was used in reference to the fact that Akihiro was mixed race. His mother was a Japanese woman, Itsu, who was murdered before she could give birth to him, and his father was Wolverine, who believed that their unborn child had also been killed along with his wife, and therefore did not know that he'd actually been stolen and survived following Itsu's death, which was pretty awkward later. Daken was raised to hate his father and would grow up to become a villain and specifically an enemy to Wolverine. Norman would recruit Daken to become his stand-in Wolverine for his Dark Avengers team, which I love.
Number 4. Ragnarok. We've already had one Thor replacement on this list, but luckily the Dark Avengers were having a buy one get one free sale and threw in an evil cyborg clone as a bonus. Eventually going under the apocalyptic Norse moniker of Ragnarok, this clone was originally made by Tony Stark, based off a strand of hair that the billionaire stole after his first encounter with the Asgardian. During the events of Civil War, Tony unleashed this mad clone as a deterrent against the anti-registration side of the conflict, and received a ton of backlash when the clone wound up being more powerful than intended and eventually had to be destroyed by the god Hercules. Nevertheless, cyborg clones just don't die, and Ragnarok was given his new codename as a member of the Dark Avengers and lending muscle to Norman Osborn's new reign of terror. Could you imagine seeing this guy in the MCU? I'm sure Chris Hemsworth is down for playing double the roles, right?
Number 3. Moonstone. Moonstone is someone I've wanted for a while in the MCU. She's not only the Dark Avengers stand-in for Carol Danvers as their Miss Marvel, but has also been a member of the Thunderbolts as well. So it seems doubly likely that we'll get her eventually. Norman chose Karla Sofin to become his Miss Marvel after Carol refused to join Osborn's team. Karla also would become an antagonist to Carol herself, as well as having a history with the Marvel name prior to that. I really am eager to see Captain Marvel and Moonstone face off in the MCU, so I'm really hoping that Karla does end up joining our new darker hero team that seems to be slowly forming. I can't wait.
Number 2. Mac Gargan. Spider-Man has had more than his fair share of animal-themed villains over the years, but few have had as many twists and turns in their persona as GARGAN, most commonly known as the Scorpion. Originally hired as a private investigator by J. Jonah Jameson to learn more about our beloved wallcrawler, Gargan's rivalry with the webhead ascended into supervillainry when he was paid $10,000 to undergo a procedure giving him all the proportional strength of, you guessed it, a scorpion. But that's far from the only name Gargan has gone under, as for a time he was also the host of the Venom symbiote, appearing much larger and more violent than the villain ever had before. This insane level of violence made it all the more worrying when Norman Osborn shrank down Gargan's symbiote so that he could more easily fit in as the Dark Avengers version of the beloved Spider-Man. Now, technically GARGAN has already appeared in Spider-Man Homecoming without any superpowers yet, but come on Marvel Studios, we need to see Nacho from Better Call Saul wearing a symbiote suit pronto.
Number 1. Iron Patriot. Yep, you maybe guessed it. Iron Patriot is probably one of my favorite Dark Avengers around and is also our number 1 spot. He also happens to be both the leader of the team and of Hammer, the organization behind the Dark Avengers. That's right, Iron Patriot is none other than Norman Osborn, who stands in as a version of the Avengers' Iron Man. Of course, he is much more sinister and obsessive than any version of Tony could ever be. And sadly, he also kind of ruined the Iron Patriot name. Poor Rhodey. Norman as Iron Patriot is not only a team member, but is also the one who ultimately decides who he wants on his team, recruiting other villains and turning them into alternate versions of superheroes. I also just selfishly want Norman Osborn in the MCU for Spider-Man because he's such a great villain overall for Spidey, but then again, he also has proven himself as a great villain just overall in the comics, so to see him as like a big bad would also be pretty cool. Number 10. Black Widow. The Avengers in the Ultimate Universe are different from their main continuity counterparts, as while the Avengers in 616 are a team of bona fide heroes brought together by massive and often global threats, the Avengers of Earth 1610 were brought together by Nick Fury and are often a team composed of former villains and kinda anti-heroes, people less marketable generally than 1610's Ultimates, which are like the equivalent to the 616's Avengers. Instead, the Avengers from 1610 end up becoming more comparable to DC's Suicide Squad, a team of reluctant participants who are forced to work together to complete missions for S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury. Monica Chang, however, was not one of the more criminal-based members of the team, and instead was the new Black Widow. She was given the mantle of Black Widow after the death of Natasha, who it turned out was a traitor to S.H.I.E.L.D., the Ultimates, and the USA. Monica was with the Avengers team from day one, joining them on their first mission to apprehend Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, and locate and put a stop to the Red Skull. Monica doesn't have any superpowers, but is a trained agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. She is a skilled spy, combatant, and is experienced with various types of firearms, though typically is known for wielding 2 pistols. While wearing her Stark suit, she also possessed enhanced strength and speed. However, she was still a normal human, and as such was still able to be killed fairly easily when she went up against the immortal Green Goblin. Poor Monica though, I feel like that whole thing kinda did her dirty because, you know, she actually survived for a long time prior to that. So it was really weird that she was like, I'm gonna go into this fight and I'm gonna be super unprepared. Hey, then you die. That's what happens. Monica should know that. Number 9. The Punisher. The Punisher in the reality of Earth 1610 was a member of both Nick Fury's Howling Commandos, who fought against the Maker's Dark Ultimates, and a member of Fury's Avengers. The Punisher's powers are basically the same as his Earth 616 counterpart. In other words, he doesn't really have any superpowers. He's mostly just a man who is really skilled in his use of various firearms. He was a trained police officer with the NYPD, so has lots of tactical training and experience. The first time he joined the Avengers, it was to protect the Vice President against Ghost Rider, but the spirit of vengeance convinced Frank to stand down, and even assist him in the end, also helping him to escape. The Punisher would also escape S.H.I.E.L.D. custody following the mission, but would later be recruited once more by Fury after he ended up in prison. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more Ultimate lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Also, check out our Ultimate Marvel Universe playlist for more videos like this. Number 8. Red Wasp. Red Wasp initially went by the name of Swarm and was a member of the antagonistic Liberators team. She was believed to have been killed in the fight between the Liberators and the Ultimates by the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, who became giant and stepped on Swarm. However, Petra Laskov managed to survive, saved by S.H.I.E.L.D. and put into rehabilitation by them. Rehabilitation. She was made to work for them and join up with their Avengers team. They even placed an obedience chip within her to make sure that she followed orders. Rehabilitation. During her time with S.H.I.E.L.D., Petra would take up the mantle Red Wasp. She can shrink herself down to the size of an insect and can control large swarms of insects as well. However, because of her insect-like abilities, she can also be defeated using insect repellent. So, pretty cool powers, but with a pretty big weakness. Number 7. Blade. Blade was recruited to the Avengers by Nick Fury, who promised to deliver him Deacon Frost in exchange for his service. Frost is the man responsible for killing Blade's mother and turning him into the creature that he is, in case you didn't know that. Blade helped to apprehend Tyrone Cash after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned he was responsible for selling off their super soldiers on the black market. Blade incapacitated Cash through hypnosis. Ooh, supernatural powers. However, despite him being part vampire, Blade is not as tough as you'd expect, especially in comparison to the tough version of the character we know from the Earth 616. Iron Man found that out when he basically crushed the poor anti-hero. Blade's time serving as part of the Ultimate Avengers may have also helped to get him on the main continuity Avengers team of Earth 616 in the future. I also gotta say, I really love Blade as an addition to the 616 Avengers. I don't know if everybody else is super enjoying that, but I'm really enjoying that. Are you enjoying that? I hope you are. Number 6. Hawkeye. But wait a minute, isn't Hawkeye a member of the Ultimates? Well, yes, he has been that too, but hey, he can do both. Hawkeye, despite being more of a bona fide hero, still had a pretty shady past, which is what made him a great candidate for the Avengers team. Nick Fury invited him to join originally when they went on the hunt for Red Skull, and Barton agreed. In fact, I believe Hawkeye actually helped to bring this team together as well. The Avengers team for him was like a Black Ops group willing to do the dirty work that the Ultimates couldn't be seen getting involved in. Often this meant the villains they went after usually ended up dead. Such was the case with Red Skull in the end. Hawkeye might just seem like a guy with a bow, and well, he is. But he is really good with that bow. He has enhanced vision, which allows him to see much farther and clearer than your average human, and he is an extremely skilled fighter, pilot, and spy. So, you know. Also, he's deadly with fingernails, so watch yourself if you're just facing him as he is. If he's got fingernails, he's got weapons. Number 5. War Machine. War Machine is James Rhodes, who became a close friend to Iron Man and ended up being gifted a suit of armor from Tony to use in his own heroic adventures. He would end up being recruited and serve on the revived Avengers project as a member of the team during their first mission, where they attempted to defeat and capture Red Skull. Rhodey happened to be armed with a nuke to use against the Red Skull as part of a last resort plan, if needed. But the Red Skull had overheard about this plan and said nuke, and so managed to disable it easily using the Cosmic Cube. Honestly, if the Red Skull didn't have the Cosmic Cube though at this time, my money would have definitely been on War Machine in this fight, because War Machine I think is pretty powerful. War Machine would also for a time gain temporary Hulk-like powers after being given some of Tyrone Cash's Hulk serum. Number 4. Nerd Hulk. While Nerd Hulk is a very powerful character in terms of his abilities being on the same level of power as Bruce Banner's Hulk from Earth 1610, he tends to end up being not so powerful in actuality when battling other people. This is because he has a tendency to hold back though. Nerd Hulk is a clone that Gregory Stark, Tony Stark's brother, created. Nerd Hulk prefers to try and resolve conflicts using logic as opposed to violence, and it is the marriage of his intellect and strength combined that holds him back from being as deadly as he could be. Still, the potential is there, and he does have access to the same amount of strength and ferocity as Banner if he'd only feel inclined to use it. Nerd Hulk was a member of the Avengers team when they were first resurrected and went after Red Skull. He would also later attempt to join the Ultimates, but he was denied membership. Sad. Poor Nerd Hulk. I love him with his little glasses. Number 3. Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is like the evil brother of Tony Stark. He is the more immoral of the two when it comes to technology, but is more put together overall in comparison to his brother. Much less of a mess, if you will. This obviously made him a valuable asset to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury, and so he ended up on the Avengers team. However, Gregory was also super smart, and was using his time working with S.H.I.E.L.D. to put certain plans into action that would allow him to take over control and eventually kind of rule the world, sort of. After Fury seemingly went rogue and Carol Danvers was also removed from the chessboard, Gregory was made the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and attempted to use his influence and nanite tech to cause chaos and war to erupt in other nations. Fortunately, he would be defeated by his brother Tony, who disabled his nanites with an EMP, allowing Thor to take him down. Still, for a time, Gregory was a pretty valuable member of the Avengers team, and later a formidable villain to them and to the Ultimates. And for that, he gets some bonus points, that's what I say. Gold Star Gregory Stark, that's what I call him. For evilness, I guess. Number 2. Tyrone Cash. Tyrone Cash was a fairly powerful version of the Hulk, and actually was the first Hulk to exist in the Ultimate Universe. He created the Hulk serum before his protege Bruce Banner was able to, and decided to use it on himself. This gave him massive strength, and he took the name Tyrone Cash, and decided to become a criminal, using his brilliant intellect to avoid capture for longer than a decade. Previously, he'd been known as the Scientist and as Banner's mentor, Professor Leonard Williams. Eventually, Cash was apprehended and forced to join the Avengers team, and after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned that he'd betrayed them, Fury had him executed. So of course, who's the most powerful? Who could it be? Number 1. Nick Fury. When it comes to the Avengers team, Nick Fury is like the Amanda Waller of it all, in comparison to the Ultimate Avengers DC counterpart, which would likely be the Suicide Squad. Nick Fury was the one to resurrect Project Avengers, and while he claimed this was done to hunt down the Red Skull, Captain America's villainous son in this reality, it is actually believed that Fury had orchestrated Red Skull's return in order to get his job back as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and resurrect the old abandoned Avengers project. That's just so Nick Fury, I'm just saying. Nick Fury holds a lot of power not just as a master spy who often deals in secrets, but also because he was exposed to the super soldier serum and has influence over the rest of the Avengers team as their overall leader and organizer. He's just got a lot of power. He's also like got a million plans, so if you're like, oh, I know how I'll beat Nick Fury, he probably already has a plan for if you try to do that to him. That's how good he is.